Welcome everybody to this workshop of Know Your Archetypes, Know Yourself. I'd like to begin with a poem which is actually anonymous. I wish I could give credit because I think it is just so apt. So whoever used this as a creative expression, may they be blessed right now. Time is, love is, death is, and the wheel turns, and the wheel turns, and we are all bound to the wheel. And the sage said, "Lo, that which binds you to the wheel is of your own making, and the very wheel is of your own making. And the wheel turns, and the wheel turns, and we are all bound by the wheel." So on that note, I have a question for you. Your choices in life, are they affected by your triggers, by your emotions? Or are your choices coming from a conscious place? We'll come back to that question in a moment. But I'd like to first share with you a story about a man that I know who was a workaholic. Perhaps you also know somebody who is a workaholic. And he was told at one point in his life that he needs to slow down. He needs to take time out, he needs to look after himself. And for a while he did, but then eventually he got back to his old patterns. And his draw card was the greed. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. I'm just going to finish this goal, and when I've reached X, then it'll be fine. And then I'll be able to take a break and look after myself. And then he reaches that goal, and suddenly, oh, that's not enough. And then we need to reach the next goal. And so he carried on. And every time he had an excuse. And what was really happening there was his addict archetype was negotiating with him so well and so powerfully that he bought into it. And he believed it, but to the detriment of the archetype being completely empowered in the shadow, so that what happens now is fate takes over. There's no more conscious choices. It's a prescribed destiny. Doctors will tell you that he died from a heart attack. But what he actually died from was a betrayal to himself. Because he did not follow his inner calling. He did not follow his sacred contract. He was in the shadow of his archetype. He was not in the light of his archetype. Because the light of your archetype allows you to be in a space that would be nourishing and nurturing to you. Not necessarily all easygoing, still challenges, because we need the light and the dark to work together. So I come back to that question again and just think about it for a moment now. Is there anywhere in your life that you are making choices that are based on triggers? Just giving you a moment to think about that. So think for a moment of where your triggers are showing up in your life. Personal, health, financial, work, spiritual, leisure, me time. And you might notice that in some areas it's more than others. So just take a quick stock of that and keep that in the back of your mind for now. So I want to share with you a story about myself with my son, where I was triggered with anger, and also how that shifted. So we were chatting about something, I can't actually remember what, but as teenagers are, he was pushing my buttons, and I was remaining calm, as I usually do, and he carried on pushing my buttons, and I remained calm, and it went on this little game, which it is, it's a game, it's a dance, light and dark, light and dark, light and dark, and then something happened. He must have said something. I cannot remember, because when often you are in now turning to that shadow stage, you lose that, which is why people say, I felt like I was unconscious. You lose that consciousness, so you don't always remember. And I don't remember what it was that was said, but I do remember I suddenly had this, it was like fire coming up, and I wanted to scream, and I just wanted to leave and walk away and actually drive away and leave him and go somewhere and be by myself, but I couldn't do that. But I was actually quite shocked and a little bit concerned of this intense emotion coming up through me. And it got to the point where I didn't let anything out, but I managed to say to him, I think we just need some time apart. Why don't you just go and walk the dog and give me some time? He eventually agreed, which I was quite surprised. So there was some play that was happening there, that he was understanding on a deeper level the necessity for this. And he went for a walk, not very long, but in that time I managed to do a process on myself called the path method. So the path method is an amazing technique which, when you learn, you can use very, very quickly. And I confronted what came up within me. I acknowledged it, I named it, I felt it, I showed it, and then I released it. And then I replaced it with something from my higher being. And I came in with my light. So I consciously brought in the light, Finished with the process. As he walked in, I didn't feel like, a huge 180-degree shift in the terms of I'm going to hug and kiss you now. I still felt, there was a bit of stuff that I wanted to shake off. But I thought, okay, look, I've done what I can do. He walked in, he went to his bedroom. And a voice said to me, let's go and check out what's happening. Because I couldn't pick up anything when he walked in. He hung up the leash, went to his room. So I went to his room and said something arbitrary to him. And he turned around with a bigger smile on his face and started chatting with me and talking with me about supper and even presenting a solution to the problem that we were just talking about. And I just stood there amazed at this shift in his archetype, because my process, it was not mine. It had involved him. It had affected his, not only energy field, but his experience of his archetype within him, even though he wasn't in the room. And it invited the light of that archetype to come out. And that's what he presented me with. And I was, even though I've done this process so many times and it's worked, every time it's gobsmacking. It's incredible how we are all so connected and everything is so intertwined. So never to think that what we put out is it, and we must keep the smile on and keep looking happy and calm in front of people, because then it's going to allow everybody else to be happy and calm. It goes way, 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 way deeper. And even just thinking of mirror imaging, so the mirrors in our brains are reflecting each other's, and that is being received and transmitted right now as we sit here. So the power of your thoughts, the power of your choices is just so powerful. So when we get stuck in our shadow, it is the shadow's way of asking. When we get stuck in our shadow, it's the shadow's way of asking, please bring in the light. So we need the light for the shadow and vice versa. Now, Carolyn Myss has a wonderful quote which I'd like to read to you. She describes the spiritual life as the sacred path of the shadow because you need every ounce of the sacred to pursue the shadow. It is the pursuit of the darkest path in you with the lightest part of you. And when you feel yourself becoming toxic, and you feel that turn, like I was feeling that turn within me on that day with my son, that's the shadow coming up. When you feel yourself going from one person almost to another, perhaps you walk into a room or somebody walks into your space and you suddenly feel like, oh, your hairs stand on end. That is called a shadow attack. Your shadow is being triggered. People, relationships, situations. It doesn't have to be obvious. It can be something sensory as well. So just think back now to a recent time when that happened to you, and what was the outcome? What did you do with that? How did you work with it? Did you buy into the shadow? Did you allow it to take control? And a shadow doesn't mean you react. A shadow can also be feeling repressed and, okay, I just won't say anything. I'll just withdraw. Or did you remain in your essence and your truth at that time? Which is very, very challenging to do. So one way that a shadow can also show up is our inability to love, our inability to give or receive affection. And this is very, very prominent amongst many people. It's the hardest aspect of the journey to empower others. A lot of people find this difficult to do, to validate other people, because for some reason it's felt that if we validate somebody else, we're giving away our power. And that is why, if you know of anybody in your life who withholds, doesn't want to give compliments, doesn't want to be nice in any way, doesn't respond to the love that you give, or isn't giving out of their own, you can now start to understand from a deeper level that there is a fear that if I give from me, I'm actually also going to be taking away from me. And I don't have enough within me at the moment to give. They feel that their resources are not enough. So where do our archetypal patterns come from? They come from our intuition, our senses. So it's not the gut instinct that I need to turn left now and not right because I just feel like I can't go down that path. It's from a deeper place, but it's also not from a place where you need to sit and be quiet and go into a meditative state. It's that intuitive part of you that's with you every moment that you can take a deep breath in and connect to your essence. Connect to your soul, connect to your life purpose, and it comes to you, it comes to us in different ways. It comes to us through symbols, through imagery, through behavior, through other people as well. So the messages that other people bring into our lives are very, very powerful in terms of assisting and supporting our journey. So our journey inwardly, but also outwardly. Our health as well. Let's move on to Carl Jung. So Carl Jung, as many people understand him to be the founder of archetypes. And his work is sometimes referred to and sometimes not. But I would like to share with you some of his philosophies and insights, because I do think he certainly played a large role in activating this concept. Carl Jung believed that we all have access to and are affected by memories from our ancestors. So just as we have DNA memory, we have psychic memory. So the original meaning of the word psyche is actually soul. So that actually makes a lot of sense if you think of our soul memories. And he used the term collective unconscious. So this is where those memories are stored. And the collective unconscious is in our subconscious. And when it gets triggered, it comes up to the conscious, and there's a reaction which activates the archetype. And he had an individuation process which involved archetypes as well as different areas of the persona. But today we are just going to be looking at the archetypes specifically. I'd like to share with you now some quotes that I found quite apt from Jung. And he says, archetypes are cognitive categories or predispositions that humans are born with to think, feel, and act in a specific way. Archetypes cannot be perceived directly from their existence, but can be recognized only through images which arise from them. So there's a lot of imagery, and I want you to remember this. It's very, very symbolic. We're going to be coming back to that quite a bit later. So he also says there are as many archetypes as there are typical situations. So just to pause on the quote there, archetypes doesn't have to be person-specific. It can be situational as well. Needless repetition has engraved these experiences into our psychic constitution. Hence, our psychic memories from our ancestors. Now, this one I really resonate with. For the sake of mental stability and physiological health, the unconscious and the conscious must be integrally connected and thus move on parallel lines. If they are split apart or disassociated, psychological disturbance follows. In a kinesiology session, I would say we need a balance between our conscious and subconscious. And we use specific techniques, which is a manual fix. But you will notice that when you come for your next kinesiology session, chances are there are areas that are out again. And it needs to be reset and reminded every time how to be. So support structure for that is a process such as this, working with archetypes, knowing how to understand them and yourself as a whole. So the process, Jung says, of confronting the unconscious is called individualization. So you can go and research that a little bit more on the web if you ever have time and you want to take this a little bit further. It is really fascinating and interesting. And yes, there's so much work of Jung's available online. So this is something from Anthony Stevens, and he sums it up quite well. Archetypes give rise to similar thoughts, images, myths, feelings, ideas in people, irrespective of their age, race, creed, class, geographical location, or history. So if we think of myths from around the world that were created at a time when people were not connecting globally like we do today, yet you will see similarities. And we've all seen that through the different cultures, the different religions. Again, Jung's interpretation is this ancestral psychic connection, this collective unconscious experience that we are all having.